Pregnant German Shepherd collapses near baby. The ending will break your heart. The rain was relentless, battering the windows of the Carters' modest home like an army of tiny drummers. Inside, the atmosphere was just as stormy. Lila Carter, a young mother etched with worry, sat hunched over a pile of overdue bills, her dark hair escaping its tie to frame a face etched with fatigue. Daniel, her husband, stood by the window, his shoulders tight with tension, his gaze fixed on the downpour that mirrored their financial woes. Their 5-year-old son, Noah, usually a whirlwind of energy, sat quietly on the floor, his blue eyes flitting between his parents' strained faces, a silent witness to the unspoken anxieties that permeated their lives. Times were tough. Daniel worked long hours at the local factory, and Lila supplemented their income with shifts at a nearby grocery store, but it never seemed to be enough. Each month brought a fresh wave of bills, each payment a struggle. The weight of their financial burden threatened to crush them, stealing their joy and casting a long shadow over their family life. "Daniel, I don't know how we're going to make it through this month," Lila said, her voice barely audible above the storm's fury. The thought of picking up yet another shift, of spending even less time with Noah, tore at her heart. Daniel turned from the window, his face softening, as he looked at his wife. "We'll figure it out, Leigh. We always do." But even as he spoke the words, doubt lingered in his eyes. Noah, sensitive beyond his years, sensed the unspoken tension. "Mom, can I go play on the porch, please, just for a little bit?" Lila hesitated. The storm was still raging, but the front porch was covered, offering some protection from the elements. Maybe a few minutes of fresh air would do him good. "Okay, sweetheart, but stay under the roof and don't go down the steps. It's raining cats and dogs out there." Noah nodded eagerly and darted towards the front door. As he stepped onto the porch, the cool, damp air brushed against his face, a welcome change from the stuffy atmosphere inside. He sat down on the wooden swing, his legs dangling, watching the raindrops create puddles in the yard. The sound of the rain was soothing, a gentle rhythm that calmed his restless spirit. Then, a sound pierced the rhythmic drumming, a weak whimper almost lost in the wind and rain. Noah turned his head, trying to locate the source of the noise. At the bottom of the porch steps, a large shape lay huddled against the wet ground, a dark form struggling in the downpour. Another whimper, louder this time, and the shape moved slightly. Lightning flashed, illuminating the scene, and Noah gasped. It was a dog, a big one, and it was trying to climb the steps.
"Mom, Dad!" Noah called out, his voice high with alarm. "There's a dog outside. I think it's hurt."
Lila and Daniel exchanged confused glances before rushing to the door. They found Noah standing at the top of the porch steps, his small face filled with concern as he pointed at the animal below. The German Shepherd was soaked to the bone, her thick fur matted and heavy with rain. She was a female, her swollen belly a clear sign of pregnancy. She looked up at them with eyes that seemed almost human in their desperation. She tried to climb another step but collapsed, her legs giving out beneath her. A dark stain on her side, half washed away by the rain, hinted at a serious injury.
"Oh my God," Lila whispered, her hand flying to her mouth.
Daniel put a protective arm in front of Noah. "Stay back, son. Stray dogs can be dangerous, especially when they're hurt." But Noah wriggled free from his father's grasp, moving down one step. "She's not dangerous, Dad. She's asking for help." The certainty in the little boy's voice was startling. The German Shepherd let out another whimper, her eyes never leaving Noah's face. There was something in those eyes, intelligence, fear, and something else, something that made Lila's heart ache. "Daniel, we can't leave her out here," Lila said, stepping forward. "She's pregnant and injured." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, conflicted. "Leigh, we can barely afford to feed ourselves right now. A dog, especially one that's about to have puppies, that's a responsibility we can't take on." Lila knew he was right. Their finances were stretched thin already. But as she looked at the dog again, something strange happened. The German Shepherd raised her head and her eyes met Lila's. In that moment, something passed between them, a connection, a silent understanding that Lila couldn't explain. It was as if the dog was trying to tell her something important. Noah had moved down another step, his small hand outstretched. "Please, Mum, Dad, she came to us, she needs us." The dog's eyes remained fixed on Lila's, unwavering and intense. Then, as if the effort had been too much, the German Shepherd's head lowered, and she let out a soft, pained sound that seemed to pierce straight through Lila's heart.
"Daniel," Lila said softly, "I think we have to help her."
Daniel looked from his wife to his son to the suffering animal at their doorstep. Rain continued to pour down, soaking the dog's fur even more. Finally, he sighed. "Fine, but just until we can find someone to take her, someone who can afford to care for her properly." Relief flooded Noah's face. "Thank you, Dad," he exclaimed, though he kept his voice gentle, as if afraid of startling the dog. "I'll get some towels," Lila said, already turning back towards the house. Daniel approached the dog cautiously, kneeling down a few feet away. "Hey there, girl," he said softly. "We're going to help you, okay? But you've got to promise not to bite." The German Shepherd made no move to growl or snap. Instead, she looked at Daniel with those same knowing eyes, then back at Noah, who had sat down on the step, talking to her in a soft, soothing voice. "It's okay," Noah was saying. "You're safe now. We're going to take care of you." Lila returned with an armful of old towels. She handed some to Daniel, and together they approached the dog. The German Shepherd remained still as they gently dried her fur, only flinching slightly when the towel brushed against the wound on her side. "This looks bad," Daniel murmured, examining the injury. "She needs a vet." "The nearest emergency vet is in the next town over," Lila said, "and they'll want payment up front." They shared a worried look, both thinking of the bills spread out on their living room table. "Let's get her inside first," Daniel decided. "Get her warm and dry, then we'll figure out what to do together." They managed to lift the large dog, who remained surprisingly calm despite the pain she must have been in. Noah ran ahead, opening doors and clearing a path as they carried the German Shepherd into their home. They made a makeshift bed in the corner of the living room using old blankets and cushions. The dog settled onto it gratefully, her eyes never leaving Noah, who had positioned himself right beside her, his small hand gently stroking her head. "She looks like she hasn't eaten in days," Lila observed, noticing how the dog's ribs were visible beneath her damp fur. Daniel went to the kitchen and returned with a bowl of water and some leftover chicken from their dinner. The German Shepherd sniffed at the food cautiously before eating it with desperate hunger. "See," Noah said proudly, "she's not dangerous, she's just scared and hungry." As the dog finished the food, Lila noticed something around her neck. Gently pushing aside the wet fur, she found a collar, faded and worn. "Maya," she read aloud. "Her name is Maya." At the sound of her name, the dog's ears perked up slightly and she raised her head to look at Lila. "Maya," Noah repeated, testing the name. "That's a pretty name." Maya's eyes moved from Noah to Lila to Daniel, studying each of them carefully as if memorizing their faces. Then, seemingly satisfied, she lowered her head onto her paws with a deep sigh. "I'll get some hydrogen peroxide for that wound," Lila said, standing up. She hesitated, looking down at Maya with concern. "I'm not sure how much we can do for her without a vet, though." Daniel nodded, his expression grim. "Let's see how she is in the morning. If she's worse, we'll figure something out." As Lila cleaned Maya's wound as best she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this dog than met the eye. The intelligence in Maya's gaze, the way she had seemed to seek them out specifically, it was unsettling in a way Lila couldn't explain. Night fell, and the storm continued its assault on the little house. Noah refused to leave Maya's side, eventually falling asleep with his head resting against her flank. Daniel had tried to convince him to go to his own bed, but the boy had been adamant. "She's scared, Dad," Noah had insisted. "She needs someone to stay with her." Lila and Daniel sat at the kitchen table, their voices low. "What are we going to do, Daniel?" Lila asked. "We can't keep her. We can barely afford to feed ourselves, let alone a dog about to have puppies." Daniel rubbed his tired eyes. "I know, but we couldn't just leave her out there to die." "No, of course not," Lila agreed. "But what if she belongs to someone? What if someone is looking for her?" "There's no tag on her collar, just a name," Daniel pointed out. "And she looks like she's been on her own for quite a while. Those scars on her body, some of them are old." Lila shuddered, remembering the numerous marks she had discovered while cleaning Maya's fur. "Someone hurt her, Daniel, badly, and more than once." A sudden crack of thunder made them both jump. In the living room, Maya's head shot up, her ears alert. She didn't bark, but her body tensed, as if ready to spring into action despite her weakened state. "Let's get some sleep," Daniel suggested. "We can figure out what to do in the morning." Lila nodded, though she doubted sleep would come easily with a strange dog in their home and so many unanswered questions swirling in her mind. They made their way to the living room to check on Noah one last time. The sight that greeted them made Lila's breath catch in her throat. Noah was curled up against Maya, fast asleep, his small hand still resting on her fur. Maya was awake, her eyes shining in the dim light, watchful and alert. As Daniel and Lila approached, Maya's gaze locked onto them, and Lila felt that strange connection again.
"It's almost like she's guarding him," Daniel whispered.
"Let's leave them be," Lila decided. "She doesn't seem like she's going to hurt him." As they turned to go, Lila looked back one more time. Maya was still watching them, her eyes reflecting a wisdom and sadness that seemed impossible for an animal. In that moment, Lila felt certain that bringing Maya into their home had changed something, set events in motion that they couldn't yet understand. Later that night, Lila woke with a start. Something had disturbed her sleep, a sound, or perhaps just an unsettling dream. Beside her, Daniel slept soundly, unaware of her sudden wakefulness. Lila slipped out of bed and padded quietly down the hallway to check on Noah and Maya. The living room was dark, illuminated only by flashes of lightning from the ongoing storm. As her eyes adjusted to the dimness, Lila realized that Noah was no longer lying next to Maya. Instead, he was standing by the window, peering out into the night.
"Noah," Lila whispered, concerned. "What are you doing up, sweetheart?"
Noah turned to look at her, his face eerily calm in the shadows. "Mum, someone's out there." Lila's heart skipped a beat. She hurried to Noah's side, following his gaze out the window. The rain had finally begun to ease, allowing better visibility into their backyard. At first, Lila saw nothing but the glistening wet grass and the trees swaying in the wind. Then, a movement caught her eye, a tall figure standing just inside their fence line. Fear gripped Lila's throat, making it hard to breathe. The figure was motionless, watching the house. Then, as if sensing they had been spotted, the shadowy form turned and disappeared into the darkness beyond the yard. A low growl made Lila jump. Maya had managed to get to her feet and was standing beside them, her eyes fixed on the spot where the figure had been. Despite her injuries and her pregnant state, the German Shepherd's posture was protective, her body tense and ready. "Noah, get away from the window," Lila said, trying to keep her voice steady as she pulled her son back. "Go wake up your father." Noah hesitated, looking from his mother to Maya. The dog was still growling, a deep warning sound that raised the hair on Lila's arms. "Now, Noah," Lila insisted. As Noah ran to get Daniel, Lila turned back to the window. There was no sign of the figure now, but the unsettling feeling remained. Who would be lurking outside their home in the middle of a storm, and why? Maya pressed against Lila's leg, still growling softly. Lila reached down to touch the dog's head, surprised by the comfort the gesture brought her. "You saw them too, didn't you?" she whispered. "Who are they, Maya, and what do they want?" Maya looked up at her, and in the flash of lightning, Lila could have sworn she saw understanding in those dark eyes, and something else, something that looked almost like fear. Daniel burst into the room, his hair tousled from sleep, his eyes wide with alarm. "What's going on? Noah said there was someone outside." Lila nodded, still keeping her gaze on the yard by the fence. They ran off when they realized we'd seen them. Daniel moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. I don't see anyone now, they're gone. But they were there, Lila insisted. Noah saw them first. Noah had returned to Maya's side, his small hand buried in her fur. Maya knew, he said confidently. She started growling before I even got to the window. Daniel looked from his son to the dog, his expression skeptical but concerned. I'll check the doors and windows, make sure everything's locked. As Daniel moved through the house, securing their home, Lila knelt beside Noah. How did you know to look out the window, sweetheart? Noah shrugged, his eyes fixed on Maya. I just woke up and then Maya was looking at the window, so I looked too. Did you see who it was? Lila asked gently. Noah shook his head. Just someone tall. But Maya didn't like them. Lila glanced at the German shepherd, who had finally settled back down onto her makeshift bed, though her eyes remained alert, focused on the window. I think you're right about that. Daniel returned, his face grim. Everything's locked up tight. It was probably just someone cutting through our yard to get out of the rain. But Lila wasn't convinced, and from the way Maya continued to watch the window, neither was she. Let's all try to get some sleep, Daniel suggested, though his eyes betrayed his unease. Noah, do you want to come to our room for the rest of the night? Noah shook his head firmly. I want to stay with Maya. She needs me. Daniel and Lila exchanged looks, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Daniel sighed. All right, but we're bringing your mattress in here. You're not sleeping on the floor. As Daniel went to retrieve Noah's mattress, Lila sat beside her son, watching as he stroked Maya's fur with a gentleness that made her chest tighten with pride. She came to find us, Mom, Noah said, his voice filled with certainty. She knew we would help her. Lila smiled, though worry still gnawed at the edges of her mind. Maybe she did, sweetheart. Daniel returned with Noah's mattress, setting it up close to Maya's makeshift bed. Noah climbed onto it eagerly, his eyes already heavy with sleep despite the earlier excitement. We'll be right in our room if you need us, Lila reminded him, tucking the blanket around his small frame. Noah nodded, his eyes drifting closed. Good night, Mum. Good night, Dad. Good night, Maya. As if in response, Maya shifted slightly, positioning her body so that she lay between Noah and the window, a silent guardian in the night. Lila and Daniel returned to their bedroom, though sleep seemed unlikely now. They sat on the edge of their bed, voices hushed. What do you think is going on, Daniel? Lila asked, unable to shake the image of the shadowy figure from her mind. Daniel shook his head. I don't know, but I think we need to find out more about this dog, where she came from, who she belongs to. She's been abused, Lila said, her voice hardening. You saw those scars, and now someone might be looking for her, someone who hurt her. We don't know that, Daniel cautioned. But I agree, we need to be careful. First thing tomorrow, we'll take her to a vet, get her checked out, see if she's microchipped. Lila nodded, though a part of her was afraid of what they might discover. There was something strange about Maya, about the way she had arrived at their doorstep, about the connection she seemed to have formed with Noah so quickly. She protected him tonight, Lila whispered. She sensed something was wrong before we did. Daniel didn't argue. He had seen it too, the way Maya had positioned herself between Noah and potential danger, despite her own weakened state. Let's just take this one step at a time, he said, squeezing Lila's hand. For now, we all need rest. As they lay down, neither spoke of the fear that had taken root in their hearts, the sense that by bringing Maya into their home, they had unwittingly become part of something bigger, something potentially dangerous. In the living room, Maya remained awake, her eyes fixed on the window, her ears alert to every sound outside. Despite her pain, despite her exhaustion, she maintained her vigil, a silent protector for the family that had taken her in, and for the puppies she carried within her. Morning came with pale sunlight filtering through the windows, chasing away the shadows of the stormy night. Lila woke early, her mind still troubled by the events of the previous evening. She made her way to the living room, where she found Noah already awake, sitting cross-legged beside Maya, talking to her in hushed tones. "Good morning, sweetheart," Lila said softly, not wanting to disturb the peaceful scene. Noah looked up, his face bright, with a smile that Lila hadn't seen in weeks. "Mom, Maya's feeling better. She drank all her water and she let me check her hurt side." Lila approached cautiously, still not entirely comfortable with the large dog, despite the connection she had felt. Maya watched her with those intelligent eyes, then slowly lowered her head in what almost seemed like a gesture of respect. "Let me see," Lila said, kneeling beside Maya. The wound on her side looked angry and red, but it no longer seemed to be bleeding. What concerned Lila more were the other marks she could now see clearly in the morning light, old scars crisscrossing Maya's body, telling a story of long-term abuse. "Who did this to you?" Lila whispered gently, running her fingers over a particularly nasty scar on Maya's shoulder. Maya whined softly, leaning into Lila's touch. The trust in that simple gesture made Lila's throat tighten with emotion. Daniel entered the room, already dressed for work. "How is she?" he asked, his voice hushed. "Better, I think," Lila replied, "but that wound needs proper cleaning and she should see a vet, especially with the puppies." Daniel nodded, his eyes troubled. "I called around this morning. There's a vet just outside town who might be willing to work with us on payment. Dr. Carter, no relation." He attempted a small joke, but the worry in his eyes remained. "I'll take her in today," Lila decided. "Noah, you'll need to stay with Mrs. Jenkins next door. I can't take you and Maya to the vet." Noah's face fell. "But Mom, I need to go with her. She trusts me." Lila was about to argue when she noticed how Maya was looking at Noah, that same intense gaze that seemed to hold so much meaning. "All right," she relented, "but you have to promise to behave perfectly at the vet's office." Noah nodded eagerly. "I promise, thank you, Mom." As Daniel prepared to leave for work, he pulled Lila aside. "Be careful today. I don't like the idea of you and Noah going alone, especially after what happened last night." "We'll be fine," Lila assured him, though she shared his concerns. It was probably nothing, just someone taking a shortcut through our yard. Daniel didn't look convinced. "Call me if anything seems off, anything at all." After Daniel left, Lila set about preparing Noah for the day, while also trying to figure out how to transport Maya to the vet. The German Shepherd was large, and while she seemed stronger this morning, Lila wasn't sure if she could walk all the way to the car. "Maybe we can make a stretcher," Noah suggested, his young mind already working on solutions. In the end, they used an old blanket as a makeshift sling, with Lila taking one end and Noah helping as much as his small body would allow. Maya cooperated fully, staying still as they maneuvered her into the back of their aging sedan. The drive to the vet's office was tense. Maya lay quietly in the back, but Lila couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Several times, she checked the rearview mirror, convinced she had seen a car following them, only to find nothing unusual. Dr. Carter's clinic was a small, weathered building on the outskirts of town. As Lila helped Maya out of the car, she was surprised to see the dog stand on her own, though her movements were slow and clearly painful. Inside, the receptionist looked up with wide eyes at the sight of the large, obviously pregnant German Shepherd. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her voice uncertain. "No, but my husband called earlier. This is an emergency. She's injured and pregnant." The receptionist nodded quickly, tapping at her computer. "Yes, I see the note here. Dr. Carter will see you as soon as he can. Please have a seat." The waiting room was empty except for an elderly man with a cat carrier. Noah led Maya to a corner where she settled down gratefully, her head resting on her paws. Lila sat nearby, her eyes constantly moving between her son, the dog, and the window where she could see their car parked outside. After what felt like an eternity, a door opened and a tall, slender man in a white coat appeared. "Mrs. Carter? I'm Dr. Carter. Quite the coincidence with our names." He smiled warmly, then his eyes fell on Maya. His expression changed immediately, becoming one of professional concern. "She came to our door last night during the storm," Lila explained, as the veterinarian knelt to examine Maya. "She's injured and, as you can see, very pregnant. Dr. Carter nodded, his hands moving gently over Maya's body. Let's get her into an exam room. I'll need to take a closer look at this wound, and I'd like to check on the puppies. With the help of a veterinary assistant, they managed to lead Maya into a sterile room with a metal examination table. To Lila's surprise, Maya jumped onto the table herself as if she had done this many times before. She's very well trained, Dr. Carter observed. This is not a stray dog, Mrs. Carter. This is someone's pet, someone who invested time in her training. Noah, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. She has a name. It's Maya. It's on her collar. Dr. Carter's eyebrows rose as he pushed aside Maya's fur to reveal the worn collar. Maya, he repeated, a beautiful name for a beautiful dog. As the vet continued his examination, Lila watched nervously. Maya remained perfectly still, only whimpering slightly when Dr. Carter cleaned her wound. This is a knife wound, the vet said suddenly, his voice grim. Someone deliberately cut her, and these other scars, some are old, some newer. This dog has been systematically abused for some time. Lila felt sick. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed was still shocking. Will she be okay? And what about the puppies? Dr. Carter straightened up, his face serious. The wound isn't as bad as it looks. I'll clean it properly and stitch it up. As for the puppies, he moved an ultrasound wand over Maya's swollen belly, watching the screen intently. They look healthy, but she's very close to term. I'd say within the next few days, maybe even hours. Noah's face lit up. We're going to have puppies at our house. Noah, we can't, Lila began, but Dr. Carter interrupted her. Actually, it would be best if she didn't move around too much right now. She needs a quiet, safe place to give birth. Lila bit her lip, thinking of their financial situation and the small size of their home. But one look at Noah's hopeful face and Maya's trusting eyes made the decision for her. All right, we'll take care of her until the puppies are born and healthy enough to be adopted. Dr. Carter smiled. I think that's a wise decision. Now there's one more thing I'd like to check. He ran a handheld scanner over Maya's neck and shoulders, the device emitting a small beep. Ah, as I suspected, she's microchipped. Lila's heart skipped a beat. So you can find out who she belongs to? Yes, the information should be in the database. Dr. Carter moved to a computer in the corner of the room and began typing. His brow furrowed as he read the screen. That's strange. What is it? Lila asked, moving closer. Dr. Carter turned to look at her, his expression troubled. According to this, Maya was registered to a man named David Holloway, but there's a flag on the account. He paused, his eyes moving to Noah, who was still petting Maya. Mrs. Carter, perhaps your son could wait outside with my assistant for a moment. Lila nodded, understanding that whatever the vet had found was not something a child should hear. Noah, sweetheart, why don't you go wait in the reception area? Maybe the nice lady at the desk will give you a juice box. Noah looked reluctant to leave Maya, but after a reassuring nod from his mother, he allowed the veterinary assistant to lead him out. Once the door closed, Dr. Carter turned back to the computer. Mrs. Carter, according to this database, David Holloway was reported dead 4 months ago. Lila gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Dead? Then where has Maya been all this time? That's the question, isn't it? Dr. Carter said, his eyes moving to Maya, who was watching them intently as if she understood every word. If her owner died 4 months ago, where has she been? And who inflicted that recent knife wound? Lila felt a chill run down her spine. The shadowy figure from the previous night suddenly seemed more sinister. Do you think someone is looking for her? Dr. Carter's expression was grim. I don't know, but I think you should be careful, Mrs. Carter. Something doesn't add up here. As if sensing their distress, Maya whined softly, her eyes moving between them. I'll stitch her up and give her some antibiotics, Dr. Carter said, turning back to his patient. But I'm also going to make a call to the police. They should know about this. Lila nodded, her mind racing with questions and fears. Who was David Holloway? How had he died? And why did someone want to harm his dog? By the time Dr. Carter finished treating Maya, Noah had returned, clutching a juice box and looking anxious. "Is Maya going to be okay?" he asked immediately. The vet smiled reassuringly. "She's going to be just fine. She's a very strong, brave dog, and those puppies are going to be healthy and beautiful." Relief washed over Noah's face. "Can we take her home now?" "Yes, but she needs rest and plenty of water. I've given your mum some medicine for her pain and to prevent infection." Dr. Carter knelt to Noah's level. "You've been very brave too, young man. Maya is lucky to have found you." As they prepared to leave, Dr. Carter pulled Lila aside once more. "I've called the police. They're sending someone over to your house this afternoon to take a statement. In the meantime, be vigilant. If you see anything suspicious, don't hesitate to call 911. Lila thanked him, her stomach knotting with anxiety. What had started as a simple act of kindness, taking in an injured dog, had somehow turned into something much more complicated and potentially dangerous. The ride home was silent, Lila lost in thought, while Noah sat in the back with Maya, whispering to her and stroking her fur. Several times, Lila caught herself checking the rearview mirror, searching for any sign that they were being followed. They had just turned onto their street when Lila noticed a black sedan parked a few houses down from theirs. As they drove past, she could see a man sitting inside, his face hidden behind sunglasses despite the overcast day. He seemed to be watching them intently. Lila's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She pulled into their driveway quickly, her heart racing. "Noah, let's get Maya inside right away," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. As they helped Maya out of the car, Lila glanced back at the black sedan. The man was still there, watching. Then, as their eyes met through the windshield, he started his engine and slowly drove away. Inside the house, Lila locked the doors and closed all the blinds. She helped Maya back to her makeshift bed in the living room, then called Daniel. "There was a man in a black car watching our house," she said, without preamble when he answered. "What, are you and Noah okay?" Daniel's voice was tight with concern. "We're fine. He drove away when he saw me looking at him." Lila lowered her voice, moving away from where Noah sat with Maya. "Daniel, the vet found out that Maya's owner died 4 months ago. The police are coming to take a statement this afternoon." There was a silence on the other end of the line. "I'm coming home," Daniel said finally. "This doesn't feel right." "No, you can't afford to miss work," Lila argued, though a part of her desperately wanted him there. "The police will be here soon. We'll be fine." After some persuasion, Daniel agreed to stay at work, but he made Lila promise to call him the moment the police arrived. The afternoon dragged on, each minute feeling like an hour. Lila kept Noah busy with books and quiet games, all while keeping a watchful eye on the windows. Maya seemed restless, shifting positions frequently and occasionally getting up to pace around the room before settling back down with a heavy sigh. "I think she's getting ready to have her puppies," Noah observed, his small face serious as he watched Maya. Lila nodded. "I think you might be right. Dr. Carter said it could be very soon." "I hope the police come before that happens," Noah said, surprising Lila. Maya would feel safer. Sometimes, Lila reflected, her son seemed to understand things far beyond his years. She wondered again about the connection between Noah and Maya, how naturally they had bonded, how the boy seemed to sense the dog's needs and feelings. At 3:00 p.m., a police car finally pulled into their driveway. Lila watched through a gap in the blinds as 2 officers approached their front door, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and a younger woman with a serious expression. Maya, who had been dozing, suddenly lifted her head, her ears alert. She didn't growl, but her body tensed visibly. "It's okay, girl," Lila soothed. "They're here to help us." The knock on the door was firm but not threatening. Lila answered it, keeping the chain on until she had verified the officers' badges. "Mrs. Carter, I'm Officer Bennett, and this is Officer Rodriguez," the male officer introduced them. "We understand you found a dog that might be connected to a case we're investigating." Lila let them in, watching as their eyes immediately went to Maya, who was watching them wearily from her bed. "That's her,"
Officer Rodriguez said, a note of surprise in her voice. That's definitely Holloway's dog.
Bennett nodded, his expression thoughtful. Mind if we sit down, Mrs. Carter? We have some questions that might help clear things up. Lila led them to the kitchen, away from Noah and Maya. She offered coffee, which both officers declined, then sat across from them at the small table. First, can you tell us exactly how you came to find this dog? Bennett asked, taking out a notepad. Lila recounted the events of the previous night, the storm, Maya collapsing on their porch, the decision to take her in. She hesitated before mentioning the shadowy figure they had seen, unsure if it was relevant, but ultimately decided to share everything. Bennett and Rodriguez exchanged glances at this information. And you saw a man in a black car watching your house today, Rodriguez confirmed, making notes. Yes, just when we returned from the vet. He drove away when he saw me looking at him. Bennett leaned forward, his expression serious. Mrs. Carter, there are some things you should know about the dog you've taken in. Her former owner, David Holloway, was not just any man. He was an ex-police officer, and he was found dead in his home 4 months ago under suspicious circumstances. Lila's blood ran cold. What kind of suspicious circumstances? Rodriguez took over. Holloway had been investigating a human trafficking ring unofficially after his retirement. We believe he got too close to something important and he was killed because of it. His house had been searched thoroughly and certain documents were missing. So was his dog, a highly trained German shepherd named Maya. Maya was a police dog? Lila asked, thinking of how well-behaved and responsive the German shepherd had been. Not officially, Bennett clarified. Holloway trained her privately after he left the force, but from what his colleagues told us, she was as good as any canine unit. Extremely intelligent, excellent tracking abilities, and fiercely loyal. We've been looking for her since Holloway's death, Rodriguez added. We thought whoever killed him might have taken her too. The fact that she's shown up now, injured and pregnant.
You think whoever killed her owner did this to her? Lila whispered, horrified.
Bennett's face was grim. It's possible. It's also possible that she escaped from them and has been hiding all this time. The pregnancy complicates things. Holloway's neighbors told us his dog wasn't pregnant when he died. The implications of this were clear. Maya had been somewhere else during these 4 months, long enough to become pregnant and sustain numerous injuries. What does this mean for us?